Welcome to episode 53 of the Princeton podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media, providing audio, video, and website design services here in Princeton since 1999. In this episode, our Princeton podcast host, Mayor Mark Freda, welcomed Dr. Kathie Foster, Acting Superintendent of Princeton Public Schools. In their conversation, Kathie shared her deep passion for education, highlighting her commitment to student-oriented values and the importance of community involvement. She discussed her background in various educational roles, emphasizing the importance of listening, kindness, and adapting to challenges like social media's impact on students. Kathie also outlined her current initiatives, including growth planning and creating a supportive school environment, while expressing her dedication to continuing her work in education. Princeton Public Schools are such an important part of our community. So without any further introduction, let's join our host, Mark Freda, and his guest, Kathie Foster, for episode 53 of the Princeton podcast.
Kathie, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's a delight. Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I know that we have very similar roles in different areas of the community, and so it's fun to be together.
Thank you. So let me ask you this one to start off with. How do you like being part of the Princeton Public Schools?
I love Princeton Public Schools, and I love the Princeton community. One of the pieces that I fell in love with most is that every member is so student-centered and they're actively involved in the community in so many ways, and they really care. They care about our students, they care about our schools, they care about the beautification of the town, the sustainability. So it's really just delightful to be a part of it.
Thank you. So I assume there is no real difference between being called an acting superintendent or superintendent.
That's true, yes. The main difference really is a legal one. I, believe it or not, am officially retired from the New Jersey state pension system. And since I can only serve for a limited time, I'm labeled as acting superintendent. But I really want to say, while I am here, I want everyone in the community to know that I am a person who is all in. I love this community and will work every day to serve the students of Princeton Public Schools. Part of it is I feel it's a calling, a vocation of mine, and I love doing it.
And I think you do a great job. I have loved interacting with you on any number of topics that we've talked about. So
thank you.
So you got my vote. Can you share with our listeners some of the main responsibilities of a school superintendent?
Sure. Now, it's interesting because if you researched the job responsibilities of a superintendent, you'd find that the primary functions include overseeing the district's day-to-day operations, including budget management, resource allocation, and personnel decisions. A superintendent must ensure that the district operates efficiently and effectively to support student learning. However, I really want to emphasize, and I think you share this as well, our jobs are driven by service. We are servants of this community. Service first and foremost to the students in our care and the community. And yes, that also involves lots of skills that we need, communication, problem solving, and one of the probably the most important that I think about is listening. I read an author once, and the author said, language is a gift, listening is a responsibility. And I take that responsibility of listening very seriously. And I don't know how you find, Mark, but I probably guess that listening is probably one of your most important attributes as well.
No, I agree. If you don't listen, then you're really not doing your job right. Because people want to know that they're heard. Whether you agree or disagree with them isn't as important as knowing that you've actually listened to them. And people have great ideas.
They absolutely do, and why not listen to them? And one of the people sometimes that we forget are the students themselves. And I just want to say I love listening to student voice. They're honest, they're straightforward, and they live it every day. So they have great ideas to share.
Yeah, and I think all of us, if we remember back to when we were in high school or grammar school or whatever, we were pretty smart. We were pretty intelligent. We
Think
knew what
so.
was going on around us. So just because we're a lot older now, or somewhat older, maybe depending,
How about
wiser, it doesn't mean we shouldn't give credit to people younger than us that, hey, they know what's going on and they have a good perception. We should listen. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Anyway, so just remind me now, how long have you been in? So you were at the high school, now you're the superintendent. So how long have you been here now?
Okay, so in this current role, because I laugh, I'm completing my 7th month. However, in January of 2022, I served for a short period of time, for 6 months, in the assistant superintendent role for curriculum and instruction as they were searching for a candidate. And now Dr. Tu, phenomenal person, is leading that charge. So then I retired and then got a call back, an invitation to serve for a little bit at the high school and as the interim principal, and now I'm back here as acting superintendent for Princeton Public Schools. So the time has gone quickly, but I think that we really have hit the ground running and have hired some key positions for the district. We're preparing for a growth referendum and certainly working towards achieving the strategic goals that have been collaboratively developed through the strategic planning process with the community.
Yeah, which is good. I think it's pretty amazing all that you've accomplished. You and the whole team, obviously.
The team, yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll say that sometimes, but I know here, you know there. It's always, if the team isn't working together, you're not getting anything done. So.
Absolutely.
So I believe you were the superintendent in Robbinsville also. So how long ago was that? Or how long were you there? How was that?
Oh, it was great. So I served as superintendent in Robbinsville for 4 years, but actually worked in Robbinsville for over 30 some years, which really was most of my career. I started as a classroom teacher at Sharon School when Robbinsville was a 600 student K-8 district. And then when I retired, Robbinsville was a K-12 district with about 2,400 students. So I really felt like I was growing as Robbinsville was growing. So I moved from teaching to my first role as an administrator was assistant principal at the middle school. And I loved that. And I thought, oh, I'm going to change the world. And I remember my first day I came and I was so excited. I'm going to make a difference for students and teaching and learning. And the first thing I had to do was break up an argument between 2 bus drivers who wanted to be first in line. And I thought, okay. So there are so many tasks related to a job responsibility that probably aren't in the job description themselves. But I loved it. And then I moved from assistant principal to principal, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, and then took over as superintendent. I retired for the first time in June 2020. And I just learned an incredible amount from some amazing people in Robbinsville.
Yeah, that's a great story. So what are some of the major differences or the just differences in general between running Robbinsville and Princeton?
What I can say is both communities are highly supportive of teaching and learning and education. They highly believe in education. What I would say the difference is most of Robbinsville's challenges were the result of the lack of state funding they received. And with a large and fast increase in student enrollment over a short period of time, it became challenging to maintain services for our students. If you're comparing budget cycles, each budget cycle saw a reduction in either personnel or services. And one of the things that I had to do as superintendent is always search for alternative and sustainable streams of revenue to support the ongoing budget and programs. We looked at things, believe it or not, of advertising on a billboard that we owned, a cell tower, which we didn't put up because we were concerned about the community, but you have to create all of these options.
Yeah. Some of the challenges sometimes. So what attracted you to a career in education?
I've always been a learner. I've always loved learning, even though at times learning, it did not come easily. But I was the typical child who played school in my bedroom with a chalk and chalkboard And I had a younger sister. She was 7 years younger than me. And I claim I taught her how to read. I'm not sure if that's true, but certainly she was one of my students as well as my sister. And then I'll say, perhaps as the middle child of the family, and hopefully we won't psychoanalyze what that all means, I just love helping and be of service to others. The other piece is I was always, when I grew up, I was an extremely shy child and had a very fond memory of just one teacher who saw me and knew who I was. She knew that I always had my nose in a book and loved reading, and she gave me like my first opportunity for leadership by becoming the class library. And I think teachers make a difference in our lives, and that experience I carry with me. And I think about Mrs. Reeves today and the way we can impact our children.
Yeah, excuse me, that's so true. It is amazing. And luckily, every now and then you get those special teachers.
Absolutely.
Did you grow up around here, or where did you grow up?
I'm from the Midwest. I was born in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. And my family moved to New Jersey when I was in later elementary school. So I've lived in New Jersey for most of my life now. I currently live in Hopewell Township, which is in Mercer County as well. I have 3 children and, of course, the proud grandma of 3 grandchildren who are the lights and joy of my life.
That's great. So what was your personal educational path? What did you have to do to get to where you are today to be a superintendent?
Yeah. And my path, every path is different. I took a longer journey. And if you asked me at the beginning of my career, is your defining moment going to be superintendent of schools? I would have said, no way. I love being a teacher. At my heart, I am a teacher. And so I would have expected myself to be in the classroom and retire from there. But as I began teaching, I was active in a grassroots teacher organization called Foxfire. And Foxfire is from Raven County, Georgia, believe it or not, but they focused on giving voice to students. And I was really intrigued by sharing that ownership of collaborating and co-constructing teaching and learning with our students. And so I became more and more interested in curriculum and the big picture of what it takes to be an educational leader. So then I decided to take some courses at Rider, and I actually got my educational leadership certificate and my master's at Rider University. And then I went to the University of Pennsylvania to get my doctorate in educational leadership. And honestly, I am so grateful for that, because if I had said no, one of the things I've learned, and I don't know, as we get not older but wiser, is always keep ourselves open to possibilities, and say yes to things that maybe scare us just a bit, because certainly it opens up. We learn so much more, and there's so much joy to be had.
Yeah, learning's just continues every day, if you're open to it.
If you're open to it,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, accept what's happening around you and learn from it. Do you have a vision for education?
I absolutely want to say I love public education. And so the idea that we want all students to develop skills, dispositions, and knowledge they need to become creative and critical citizens. And what better place than public ed? Because everyone is welcome. There is no tuition required. Yes, there are taxes that need to be paid, but every student that walks through the door has the same access and opportunity. And I just love that. And of course, we want our children to live lives with joy and purpose. It's really interesting when you ask parents, well, what do you want for your children? They always say, I want them to be happy. And I don't know if you've read Arthur Brooks' book about happiness, but he talks about, I think it's called The Art of Happiness. And he talks about, he's done a lot of research, and the 3 components of happiness are joy, satisfaction, and purpose. And so I always think about that as far as how we set that up in the classroom. They have to enjoy coming to school. They have to love certain pieces about school. And there are lots of opportunities as you're curious, you're learning science, you're writing your own stories. That is certainly joyful. Satisfaction means we have to be challenged. We have to be challenged enough so it's not too easy, right? It's not too hard, so we don't struggle too much. And then purpose. What's the purpose of what we're learning? So if we can instill those things, we can say that our children leave us happy citizens.
That's great. That is great. Thank you. So, Kathie, let me ask you one other question. I think a lot of people are concerned about social media, the use of everybody, all the students appear to have phones, the impact on their lives. How do the schools look at that? Or are there things the schools are trying to do to address that?
I love that question because that is a lot of our challenging work. Because as we know, kids come wired to school, right? They're always connected. And so what we were finding, interestingly enough, too, is many of our discipline cases, the conflicts and so on, arise also not just for physical conflicts anymore, as social media fights and what's challenging for kids is if you had a fight at school and you didn't have your cell phone with you, this was years ago, you could go home and have a safe place. But now kids take their phones with them home and the fight continues at home as well because it's over social media. And that's why Surgeon General, with the warning with social media, is absolutely on point. There's been a lot of articles, research about use of technology and cell phone bans even in certain, I think Connecticut, they had a middle school that banned cell phones. There are other ways as well, is just to put them away because a lot of times parents get a little anxious about sending kids to school without a way to contact them. We have a leadership team book club who's reading The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And he talks a lot about, there's research with the dangers of too much technology and cell phones and how that is reducing the resilience in students. And so we are looking at what ways could we just set aside technology-free days, or some classrooms do have places where as soon as a student would come into the class, you put your cell phone in a pocket or whatever to just so that we can really focus on each other. And I think I'm also going to tie it back to that creating a community of kindness. We have to have eye contact, be able to have real conversations, dialogue back and forth with each other. And it's very difficult to do with a device in between. And so I think we're going to continue to explore that more and more. And probably one of the most important things that we like to do is get feedback from parents as well about that.
Yeah, I think it's an important skill for students to be able to learn how to deal with other people one-on-one.
Yeah.
You know, you go out to eat at a restaurant and you'll see a family at a table and almost all of them are looking at their phone. And you're like, wait a minute, you went out to dinner to be with each other. Right. Pay attention to each other. Yeah, this whole dilemma about social media and people just so tied to their devices is a challenge.
It is a challenge. And look, I love the technology improvements that have been made for us to make sure that we can check in if we have a brand new driver, that they arrived at their destination on time, but they better not have been texting while they're driving. There are really pros and cons of anything. But yes, I think to limit the, reliance, and it's almost an addiction to our technology and cell phones, and to really learn to interact with each other.
Yeah. And I think this is just another example of the changing environment that people in your role need to be aware of. The situation changes, the technology has changed, something is changing.
Correct.
And how it impacts your student population is something that you have to be aware of and figure out how to deal with.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I know Princeton Public Schools has a bond issue to be considered. Can you just give us some of the main points of what the objectives of that are?
Absolutely. The current proposed long-term planning project is specifically targeting growth. And I know that you experience that as well. You've got this beautiful master plan. And one of the things we do as leaders is we look at our short term, and we also look at how to sustain our future. Yeah. And I know you do that really well. And we work collaboratively with that and recognize that we will have an increase in students. And one of the things we love about Princeton is our community schools. That is something that we love. So we want to hold those as sacred as much as we can. If that is in fact the case, we are going to need to build so that we can create those community schools. So part of the referendum will be that we will be adding on to a couple elementary schools where growth will occur. We have to find out where students will be mostly housed, and then we want to add to those. We're adding to 2 elementary schools, so it's renovations and also some new project work, as well as everyone's going to go through the middle school. So we want to provide some classroom spaces and common spaces for our students. And then at the high school, we know that they will eventually graduate there. So we're going to be adding on there as well. In addition, we love our schools, but we also recognize that with age comes maintenance. And part of the project also will be some HVAC work at Princeton High School.
Yeah, the whole maintenance thing. We can all build new things, but if we don't take care of what we already have, it's okay.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So how hard is it to put together the yearly operating budget for the Princeton Public Schools?
I should ask you that question, Mark, because I know, first of all, it's a very challenging process for budgeting, as always. But the good news is, and I'm sure this is the case for you as well, it's very collaborative and thoughtful. The other thing people don't realize is budgeting is a year-long process. It is not that it is January we start to prepare for an April approval. We are doing this constantly. And PPS's budget is driven by the mission and vision for access and learning opportunities for our students. Just similar to the way you use data, we use our student data. Our academic data, our absenteeism data, all different kinds of data, the strategic planning goals to help frame how we're going to allocate the resources for that particular year. And we also know there's a fine balance between what our students need, but also what our community needs as well. And so we have to be good stewards and make sure that we are efficient with our resources, maximize them, and if there's anything that we can reduce in one area so that we can strengthen in another, we always take a look at that. And we keep an open mind. And budgeting, even though for the state of New Jersey, there's something called zero-based budgeting where you start with 0 every year because you look at what do you need this next year. We also, behind the scenes, have our short and long-term plans similarly to your plans as well, what is coming in the next 5 to 7 years as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant balancing act because needs change, goals change, and you have to be responsive to changing circumstances.
Correct.
Yeah. So do you have suggested future goals for Princeton Public Schools?
My role first is to support the priorities that have already been developed under the strategic plan. But within those parameters, I really want to focus next year on creating a community of kindness. This includes both adults and children. So we start with our adults because we model for our students what kindness looks like. And we know that there's a difference between kindness and niceness, right? Kindness means we have integrity, we're honest, we have expectations, but we also do it with compassion and empathy. So I'm hoping that this campaign will address one of the strategic priorities, which is wellness, inclusion, and support for all. One of the things that's so important is we want students to look forward to come to school, feel that it is a safe place for them, that they have trusted adults who care for them, and so that they can be their most authentic and best selves. So one of the things we're really going to focus is what does kindness look like, and how do we model that, and what are our expectations and our language around kindness for all.
I think that's great, right? Because you can be nice, but let's be genuine.
That's a great word. Exactly.
Let's not just put up a facade.
No.
But because I think it's, especially when you're dealing with such a younger audience, they're looking at the teachers, the staff, all these role models.
They really are. And we know this, but words do matter. They matter.
Yes.
And sometimes, so it's as simple as sometimes people have a sense of humor and they might be sarcastic. And sarcasm for an elementary school doesn't go over. They don't understand it.
Yeah.
They just hear tone and they don't understand that someone was just kidding or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think it's really just being so intentional in our words, obviously our behaviors and our actions as well.
Yeah. And I've been lucky to be invited to some different activities at some of the schools, Littlebrook, Riverside, et cetera. And the kids are just great. They ask you great questions. They're excited to see you. They're happy that you've spent the time to be with them. And when you just accept them as they are, listen to the questions, interact at their level, and just be welcoming and nice to them, it's such a great experience.
Exactly. And they feel they can contribute as well. And that's one of the pieces. We want to make sure that all voices matter.
Yeah.
And we asked kids, and this is self-reporting, but we asked kids, how do you feel in school? And what we found is some kids still don't feel valued or safe.
Yeah.
And that's not acceptable. That's
No.
not okay.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how to turn that around.
Yeah. Every kid counts.
Every
Every
child.
single one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. So let's just talk about, how about your personal future goals? Where are you headed? What are you hoping for?
Okay, so I'm going to keep myself open to possibilities, but it's such a great question. And I'm gonna quote Monty Python. I'm not dead yet. As long as I feel that I can contribute, I want to continue this work with education because I really feel, again, so much a calling of service to help create these creative, curious citizens of the world. And I believe in public education. But I also want to balance or find harmony. I know they say you can't balance your life anymore. You have to harmonize. So I want to find harmony and play a little bit as well.
Yep.
So again, I have my grandchildren, dear friends, and I do love to travel. I am open to new possibilities that might emerge. Again, I want to continue to work as long as I can contribute.
Yeah. And I think we can all contribute, and we can contribute for a long time.
It's true.
The things you learn over a career, the experiences, it's just to be able to share those with people.
I agree. I think there is such an important piece in the wisdom of our elders, and I can't believe now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I the elder? It reminds me of my 94-year-old dad who talks about the old people in his community and where he lives. And I'm thinking, yeah, I agree, Dad. I'm the same way. But yes, I do think the experiences and some of the lessons that we've learned, we can share with others. And that's an important part of the way we can contribute as well.
Yeah. Kathie, I want to thank you for being with us. This has been a great discussion. I really appreciate you sharing so much with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark, for having me. And, I can look forward to continue our collaborative work together to just celebrate every part of Princeton.
Thank you for joining us for the 53rd episode of the Princeton Podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media, providing audio, video, and website design services here in Princeton since 1999. If you enjoyed this episode of the Princeton Podcast, please share it with your friends. Visit our website at princetonpodcast.com. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts.